In this two-part finale, we'll be heading to the Sleeping Bear Dunes National Lakeshore, a beautiful wilderness with diverse landscapes on the western coast of Michigan. In this first part, we'll be exploring the mainland and reliving our memories of the area. In the next part, we're headed to North Manitou Island to explore the backcountry wilderness that the dunes has to offer.
This is where it all started for us. We had always loved the idea of adventures, but we didn't realize how easy it was to have them. It was nearly a decade ago, in 2006, when this place kindled our passion for the outdoors. And while we had all changed in the time that had passed, the dunes continued to bask in the sunlight against Lake Michigan. Coming back to this place was like seeing an old friend after years and picking right back up where we left off.
So we're at the Platte River Campground right now. Brian and Andrew aren't going to be here until 12:30. They said they were going to be here at 10. I knew better that it was going to be after midnight. I pitched my tent already, and I checked out Lake Michigan already. It was beautiful. It's kind of hot in this tent right now. Got away from the bugs. None of them managed to get inside. And I got my platypus right here. Gonna stay hydrated. Just gotta figure out something to do until they get here. I'll probably sleep until they get here and help them pitch their tent. Get up early in the morning, get ready for the backcountry camping tomorrow. It's gonna be a good night.
Brian and Andrew had come late last night, and I found their tent pitched next to mine in the morning. I actually heard them during the night, but I was too tired to get up.
The songs of wood thrushes echoed through the tall pines that surrounded our campsite. The mosquitoes had been a bit harsh last night, so I used some ribwort plantain to treat the itchy bites. It was pretty bitter to chew on. Ribwort plantain, along with other plantago species, contain compounds which help soothe skin problems. A tea made of this plant can also help with coughs or other respiratory problems.
We ate some breakfast, which I imagine was a bit more palatable than the plantain, and filled up on water. Soon after, we made our way to a nearby ranger station to get a permit for our backpacking trip at the White Pines area. And we saw this beautiful Cecropia moth, which we later learned is the largest moth in North America.
This is actually the first time we've been in a traditional park and camp spot in a long time. I can't even remember the last time we did that. It's encouraging to see lots of people enjoying place, but it's a little bit cramped and there's no place to even go to the bathroom in the woods, so you actually have to use the facilities.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to escape from all the conveniences of society at a campground like this. For us, conveniences often make things more constricting rather than more enjoyable. So, we got our things packed up so we could go explore the rest of the park. We'd be traveling all around the park. There were a few spots we definitely wanted to see before getting to our backpacking trail. First, there was a classic Dune Climb, a popular site for tourists where you're free to roam around on the dunes. There was also a 450-foot sand dune that we wanted to stop by.
Named after a Chippewa legend of a mother bear who sleeps and waits for her two cubs to swim ashore, the 71,000 acres that make up Sleeping Bear Dunes was authorized in 1970. All of these places were incredibly familiar in our minds. We drove first to the Dune Climb, and were amazed at how familiar it all seemed. The bright blue sky and the golden sand filled us with a crippling nostalgia.
We couldn't wait to start exploring.
2006. So this is 8 years later that we're finally back. It feels weird because it looks exactly the same.
It's funny how every single molecule and grain of sand has probably moved several times over 8 years ago. But it all looks very nostalgic and familiar.
Yeah, the view from up here is just amazing.
To actually relive what was once an elusive wisp of nostalgia, to attain the unattainable, that is what being in this sort of beautiful landscape is about.
It was incredible being back. It was as if 30 square miles of the dunes hadn't changed since we'd been here. It was as if we had stepped through a portal into our past.
It was here, among the golden sand and the fluttering cottonwoods, that we first understood what it meant to truly be alive. It was here that we first got a taste of the wilderness. It was here, in the open, unrestricted dunes, that we began to truly know freedom.
The sand was hot, and every time you stopped to rest in the shade, black flies would bite your ankles. But it was worth it.
We had hiked a considerable distance in, so we still had the hike back to think about.
Almost halfway there though, and it's gonna be fun because it's all downhill from here. Should have brought a sled. Fire, that is my feet. I've never thought I'd be so happy to touch solid ground before.
Oh my god, it was literally cooking my feet.
Like last night after sleeping on this ground, I cursed the hard ground, and as soon as I took my first step, I was like, oh, thank you for solid ground.
After the incredible time in the sand dunes, we briefly stopped at a beach, where we saw the island we were planning on going to later on. Then, we stopped by a nice day hiking trail while we looked for the 450-foot sand dune.
We've been driving around the park and we arrived in this area near a little day hiking trail. And all over is this wild grapevine. Unfortunately, I don't see any grapes that you can eat, but nearby is this plant which is called mullein. And you can make a tea out of the flowers once they stalk. That'll soothe your respiratory problems. And also, the leaves are really soft and fuzzy, so that'd make great toilet paper. The dried leaves can also be smoked medicinally, and the stalk makes a good fire spindle. We've got this red clover, which is another edible plant. And over here is a tree called sumac. In the late summer and fall, this bundle of drupelets up here will turn sort of a red color. You can take the stuff from that and make a sort of lemonade drink by mixing it with water. But for now, you can't really do anything.
The scenery around us was so incredible. Big open meadows and magical maple birch forests.
So we were just talking how much this place looks like Hocking Hills in Ohio. And just like we remarked in the Dolly Sods episode, you get remarkably diverse, I don't know what, biomes or something like that in one location.
At the dunes, we had seen plants like milkweed, hairy vetch, and cottonwood. Now, we saw more shade-tolerant plants, like trillium and maple leaf viburnum, which has an edible root. There was also Solomon's seal, which has a rhizome that can be eaten raw or cooked. There were some lookalikes too, like false Solomon's seal, whose ripe, solid red berries are edible. Its rhizome is also edible, but must be cooked. Finally, there was twisted stalk, whose berries, roots, and young shoots are all edible.
2 groups on the way down have already warned us about the black flies that are up the top. It's apparently really bad up there. They tend to bite a lot, so I don't expect to stay up there very long. But hopefully we get a good view.
Reached the scenic overlook, and Lake Michigan looks absolutely beautiful. You could actually see the sand below the water. But as we were warned, the black flies are horrendous. You gotta keep moving because, ow!
We really wanted to run from the flies, but before that, I took a quick look at the plants that were growing up here.
This view is incredible, but it's also worth it to take a look around and see what plants there are. And I'm really amazed at how much biodiversity there is, even with this really sandy soil. This here is willow, and the bark of it is the basis for aspirin. So if you ever have a headache or something, you can peel some of that bark off and chew on it. And then here we've got some dogwoods growing. And the way you know it's a dogwood is you can take a leaf, and if you break it apart, there's always this sort of latexy, stringy thing in the veins that'll hold it together when you tear it. This burdock has some edible stems, and you can also dig up the root, cook that, and eat it too. And these are some first-year burdock, and you can tell because all the leaves are coming from the ground rather than from a stalk. So that means the root is ideal for eating. As for something you wouldn't want to eat, these beautiful purple and yellow flowers belong to a plant called woody nightshade. And as nice as it is to look at, it's really toxic, and you don't want to put any part of that plant in your mouth. We've also got this, which is called basswood or a linden tree. It's kind of rare to find these in the wild nowadays, but you can tell it by these really distinct looking seeds. And the bark is flexible and good for making string or shelter. And in the springtime, these leaves are young and tender and edible.
After that brief hike, it was back on the road. We stopped at a few places before finally making it to the large sand dune we had been looking for.
We're here at this 450-foot sand dune cliff, and it just drops straight into Lake Michigan. There's lots of people going down and climbing back up, probably regretting their decision. And 8 years ago when we came here, I just remember it being so hard and I needed help to get back up.
We actually have to thank you guys as parents for taking us here, because I was thinking about when we first came here, this definitely wasn't our idea by a long shot.
No.
If we had had our way, we probably would have just stayed inside and played video games at Torch Lake.
There's some guy going down the hill doing parkour and backflips.
And for sure, this was the first time that we took a bunch of cheesy pictures and videos of each other, which inspired exactly what we're doing now.
Yeah.
We just finished seeing the main touristy attractions, all the sand dunes, scenic overdrives, and stuff like that.
And it's nice to see the whole park, but it's time to get a little one-on-one time with Mother Nature.
As soon as we walked down this dock and then I saw the lake open, I immediately thought, wow, this is what we've been waiting for. This is much more what we're accustomed to doing the backcountry thing.
There were wild edibles growing even in the mowed, grassy areas before the trail.
Even in grassy areas like this, there are some edible treats hiding. There's a dandelion leaf here. And some wood sorrels over here.
What do they taste like?
Dandelion is bitter, but The wood sorrels taste like a sour apple. And then over here, these are called sheep's head sorrels. Probably because it's got these two little horns on it. And these are also really sweet and sort of tart.
We're going to the White Pines campground, and this is the Trails In trail, which is kind of ironic. But I'm really looking forward to getting there and eating. Last time we ate was about 12 o'clock.
We had finally escaped the black flies terrorizing the dunes and shores of Lake Michigan as we hiked towards the White Pine campground. However, we were greeted by equally aggressive mosquitoes along this path. The clouds of bloodsuckers were so bad that we hiked quickly to the campsite with minimal filming.
Just got to the campsite. Looks good so far. There's a communal fire, which we've never actually had before. I mean, we've gone to other people's campsites and shared their fire before, but this is just one fire ring for the whole camp. And right now, I'm furiously setting up this tent because the whole way here, really bad mosquitoes. So we just hiked the whole 2 miles or so without even stopping to film because it was so bad. But it's gonna be nice to get in this tent and just get away from mosquitoes for a few minutes and collect ourselves and then maybe eat.
I think Robbie already said it, but the whole way here there's a lot of mosquitoes. So I picked this up at a gas station. It's just basically like a little mosquito net pouch, and you're supposed to put it over your head like this. And you look might feel kind of dumb wearing it, but honestly, the whole way here I didn't have to swat at my face every 2 seconds, and I didn't have mosquitoes dive bombing my face, so it was totally worth it in my opinion. I think I might try and do something like this for the rest of my body. Just mosquito nets all over.
It's strange because during that whole entire hike, all I could think about was air conditioning, showers, beds. But when I finally got here, things just seemed to slow down and calm down. And I felt much cooler, there was a nice breeze. And there's a deep sense of satisfaction with having hiked and having sweated and gotten really hot and muggy. But now I just feel really at home. And I'm setting the tarp up to sleep outside because even though there's lots of mosquitoes, it's gonna be really nice to have the open air cooling me during this night. Instead of getting ordinary canned sardines, I decided to get some Asian-style canned squid. Here's what it looks like. The tentacles might gross a lot of people out, but that is actually the best part about the squid. Wanna try some squid?
That night, we had met some people by the fire and talked about our experience thus far, especially all of the bugs. We always meet amazing people on the trail. It's always a pleasure to meet like-minded people.
After dinner, it was time to head to sleep.
So it's about 9:15. I think I got up maybe around 9 o'clock. Pretty good night's sleep. Mosquitoes seem to calm down a little bit from last night, but they're still kind of biting, so you have to keep an eye on yourself. And I can get past the sweatiness and the humidity and all that stuff, but mosquitoes are something that just still get to me.
Well, my plan to sleep under the tarp did not go well. The whole point of sleeping on their tarp was to have the open air and have a cool night. But the mosquitoes were so bad that I had to cover myself up with a sleeping bag and mosquito net anyway. So I ended up just moving inside the tent and sleeping on the bare ground in there because it's much cooler than using an air mat. Had a pretty good night. Had a slight sore throat this morning though, I don't know why. Probably just gonna drink some hot tea or something.
I used my homemade Super Cat stove to boil some water. It's really just a can with holes in it.
Alright, so this is the first time we've actually experienced this while camping. Believe it or not, it's raining during the day. So we only experience rain during the night. We're taking cover under Andrew's shelter here. It's actually working pretty well, and this water is boiling right there, so maybe we can just have a hot drink.
As inconvenient as it is, I think I prefer the rain to the mosquitoes.
Yes. Like right now, I definitely prefer the mosquitoes because at least this is clean. But it'll be curious to see how long we actually stay that.
The rain did interrupt my bathroom usage.
As you might guess, this is pretty unpleasant.
This might be the worst luck that we've had for a while.
Yeah, we've had pretty much all the bad things you can have. It's really not ideal. But considering how many times we've had it ideal, this is actually, maybe this is kind of fun. Maybe we could find some fun in this.
It might not come across here, but we were actually quite demoralized at this point. We were soaked and hot, and the mosquitoes hadn't let up for an instant. If this is what we had to look forward to for the next few days on the island, it was going to be rough.
Yeah, so we're hiking back from the White Pine campsite, and it's been sporadically raining, so it's unfortunately not giving us a chance to really film all that much.
Yeah, the rain at least is cooling things down and it makes these pine trees look incredibly beautiful. But it doesn't seem to be doing too much to deter the mosquitoes.
Yeah.
We had a bit of temporary relief at the campsite, but they're back and they're swarming around a little bit. Even though the deluge finally let up towards the end of our hike out, we couldn't help but wonder if this bad weather would persist throughout the rest of our trip. Made it out of the trail. Now, I guess we're hitching a ferry ride to North Manitou Island. Hopefully the conditions are not worse than this.
The weather had cleared into a beautiful blue sky. It was really beautiful, but who knew if it would last?
We've arrived at this port here, which is going to take us to the island, and it's drying all my stuff off because we got rain on pretty heavily. But right now it's so windy and sunny that I think we're being lulled into a false sense of security, especially since there's no bugs here. But everyone we talked to said that the mosquitoes on this island get pretty bad. So we were actually debating whether or not we should even go to the island, and what we're doing is we're gonna go backpacking, choose one spot, and then just stay there both nights so we can hike around with our other packs. It'll make things a lot easier. We brushed our boots off to prevent any invasive species being transported to the island. North Manitou Island is isolated in Lake Michigan and has a delicate ecosystem. It's always good to do this sort of thing, especially since there was plenty of free time.
We waited around as the ferry unloaded hikers coming back from their island getaway. Now, it was our turn to board the ship. Everybody chattered excitedly as we made our way onto the ferry. There was an upper level deck, and of course we had to sit out there, in the open sun and wind. The boat took off, easing its way out of the dock before accelerating in the open lake. Water churned beneath its bow as the ferry swayed soothingly back and forth. We looked ahead, wondering what challenges and adventures were in wait for us. Would the island be riddled with even more mosquitoes and flies than we had already experienced? Would there be more rain? Somehow, riding on that boat with the wind in our hair, the spray of the water on our faces, and the warmth of the sun made us instantly forget our misgivings, and excitement for what lay ahead took over. This is where the adventure truly begins.